Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, we welcome our guests and we will have them introduce themselves, first of all, and then tell us all that they have created so far. And then you and I will take them back and get to the beginnings of that journey. So, Robyn, welcome again to Threads of Enlightenment. Thank you so much for coming by.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today.
I am glad to have you here. I know we've had some fun uh, previously trying to work this out, but thank you so much. Tell us about some of your accomplishments, what you're doing. I know you're a life coach. Talk to us about some of those things, and so that we'll know where you're at today.
Yeah, I'm a certified life coach, and really am focusing on one because that's what I love. I
Mm,
love working. Most of my clients are women. I have women and men, but I love working with people just to help them find that renewed joy and strength in their
mm,
life. For some, it's that joy and that happiness for the first time, but for most, it's really that renewed, right? They kind of get bogged down in life. Right. And life happens all around them. And somehow
yeah,
it really bogs them down inside. Right. They think
yeah.
it's happening, to them and not for them. And so it's really kind of working through those things and helping people get to where they want to be. And for most people, that involves joy, happiness, in their own self. That's where I find it comes from. But it
Hmm.
also plays into all areas of their life. It's, motherhood, parenting, relationships, all those different things. So I have a one-on-one 12-week program that I work with my clients, and we
Hmm.
walk through that. What I found is that I can teach the principles. But when I work one on one with the client, they can actually start seeing in their own life how they're creating certain things from their thoughts, because that's where it all starts, right? Our thoughts is what
Yep.
leads to our emotions. And we're
Hmm.
all looking for these great emotions, but we don't realize that's coming from our thoughts instead of our circumstances. So I get to work with people one on one, and then they start to see what they're creating in their life. And it doesn't become a theory, but it just becomes something that they can practically see in their life and start changing. So it's great stuff. I really love it.
That sounds awesome because one of the principles that I stress in the progress of becoming a better person is learning to love yourself. You
Mm.
must learn to love yourself. It has to be the foundation by which you are then able to love me. First, you have to learn how to accept all of those faults that you have and still fall in love with that person before you can then turn around honestly and say to me that you love me from that space. Then it's absolutely a unconditional response. You're not expecting something. You have learned to love you, and then you are now expressing that to me. So I love the fact that this is where the place that you deal with your one-on-ones with your clients. That is awesome. So talk to me before you started this. I believe that most of us, we are formed when we were with our families. And when we're young, we are begin to, I guess, uh, get our training from society, from our parents, from church, school, and all these other institutions, as well as individuals. They began to program us, and we began to accept those things as reality, and sometimes it doesn't blend with our personality, but we don't get to that place until many years later. Talk to me about your childhood. How was it, and those formative years that you can remember?
Yeah. So kind of what you're talking about where this started, the process started for me kind of young, because that depression and that anxiety that I lived with, for decades started with me when I was in junior high. Right.
Hmm.
And it was, some of it were events that happened. I was fortunate to grow up in a very loving family. But I think the expectations were really high. and I internalized a lot of that.
Mhm.
And so I began, a life of performance based thinking. That's where the love and the acceptance was coming from.
Mhm.
And so in that, I started to develop this inner self talk, right? That I wasn't good enough, and I was
Yeah.
unlovable, and I would never be a good enough, and all these things. And on the outside, no one really knew what was going on for a long time, right?
Mm.
Because I kept that all inside. And I
Yeah.
believe that that's where really that darkness can grow, because I don't
Mhm.
believe that we're meant to keep all that inside, right? Because that's where it just
Yeah.
grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it started out again on the outside, right? Valedictorian, most likely to succeed, most athletic, right? Had all those things going on, but inside, right, I was dying more and more every day.
Wow. That
And this
sounds. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, and this, it continued. I think it really kind of hit a head in college.
Mhm.
On top of that, then my parents were going through a divorce, and that was kind of, the top, the icing on the cake. And that's where I really started then, looking to. I had been in counseling before that, but I really went into my first hospital. I mean, just severe, severe depression.
Wow.
Started getting on medications one by one that led me, before the age of 30, I was on 11 prescription medications.
Wow. Wow.
No quality of life at that
Mhm.
point. And just still really searching all of that time. I wasn't
Yeah.
just laying around doing nothing. I just really was caught up in, the depression and anxiety in a way that it was, kind of hard for me to
Mhm.
function.
Yeah. I know that is such a reality amongst most people. The fact that we are internalizing all of these thoughts and creating monsters as they
Mhm.
began to manifest in our lives. And these are the monsters that we have to face as we began our new journey. And so it's really incredible that you had put it that way, that you were creating these monsters as you began to focus and internalize your thoughts and not allowing them to be expressed out. So tell me about, we are talking about anxiety and depression and stuff like that. These are some of the demons that you had created or allowed to grow in your life through the continual rewind of those thoughts that came to your mind and your being. How did you, in your 30s, you're on all of these meds? What happened to cause you now to begin to pivot from that type of lifestyle and behavior to try then to start to move forward to create something different?
Yeah, and so really for me, the really kind of the turning point was when I went to another doctor, still severely depressed, and this doctor spent a few minutes with me and gave me a huge diagnosis, wanted to put me
Mm-hmm.
on prescription number 12.
Mm.
And, I walked away just defeated. I'm just like, no matter what I do, right? And now this big diagnosis was given to me. And I called my mom, and she was like, Robyn, that is not you. That is not
Mm.
truth. That is not who you are. And so it was that moment of sitting back and saying, what is truth, right? It's kind of what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking, right?
Yeah.
That enlightening
Yeah.
moment. It's what is truth? Am I going to believe what all these doctors are telling me,
Mm-hmm.
or am I going to start to question? Can I
Yeah.
start to question things? And then that led to, well, can I question what I'm telling myself? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Can I question these what I later learned were lies
Mm-hmm.
about myself that I had been feeding myself daily? And
Yeah.
so that I had that power to actually stop and question and look. And in that is when I really realized that I was tearing down my life in a way that I had no idea at that point. I thought it was everything around me. I thought this was
Mm-hmm.
the way this is the way I was born, things would never change. All of those were lies, right? And so I
Yeah.
started feeding myself truth,
Yeah.
and in that truth, it completely changed my life. It really did.
Uh,
And it led me to, I got off all 11 of the, I didn't take that 12th medication. I got off all 11 medications
Mm-hmm.
right after I was able to do that. I lost 70 pounds, and I just continued to feed my brain my truth, right? The
Mm-hmm.
pure truth and thoughts about my life. And it completely changed everything for me.
Wow, it's amazing, Robyn, how our thoughts produce these diseases within our body, and I try to uh, make people aware of that, and I've told them stories and about people that I've seen arthritis as a result of unforgiveness and these
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. These thoughts, the body, if it is not handled correctly, the body will manifest the results of those continual thoughts, whatever they are. If it is good, healthy, like you said, you begin to change your thought life. And as a result, you begin to change your body and how your body respond to um, to its environment and all those stuff. Um, let's stop here for a little, Robyn, because I don't want you to get past it that quickly. I want you to focus a little more about, because depression and anxiety, these are big things, especially when we're in our situation currently with the pandemic and all the different things that are hitting people from all over different parts of their lives. Let's camp here a little and talk about how did you handle both of those monsters that you had created in your life? What steps did you take to start to defeat them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the first thing was belief that
Hmm.
things can change, right? I had to
Yeah.
change that thought that things couldn't change
Hmm.
to that, and sometimes it's what I call ladder thoughts. You have to go from, well, maybe it's possible,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you might not go from things will never be too different to they're going to be great, right?
Hmm.
You might have to have thoughts along the way that, well, what if they were different? What would that look like, right? And so you
Hmm.
have things that take you along the way. So I think belief was a huge one. I think
Hmm.
another huge one for me was compassion
Hmm.
versus really condemnation for myself. Like I should have done better. Why can I not get this under control? All those things, to turning that into that what we talked about, that loving ourselves, right? And
Yeah.
having compassion for myself to say, I wonder why this is happening, right? Like, I wonder
Hmm.
why I'm doing this. And with that, with that compassion, then leads to actions and results that are
Hmm.
actually helpful to me versus that, being so hard on myself and condemning myself. Those lead to action and results that were not serving me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I also think awareness was huge, right? So
Hmm.
when I had an emotion that I was not enjoying, I had to start learning to ask myself, what is it that I'm thinking,
Hmm.
right? What is it that's bringing this action? And then when I really started to look at it, I realized that 100% of the time, my results were tied to my thought.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I could learn to start reframing my thoughts. I could learn to start imagining. I'm sure you're probably aware of the studies that were done at Harvard that show they had pianists that came in and
Hmm.
they put electrodes and they had them play the piano, and
Hmm.
another control group that just imagined that they were playing the piano, and the same centers in their brain lights up,
Hmm.
which tells us that when we imagine good things in our lives, it takes us to that. It's just as if it's a memory in our brain. So we can continue to replay those that past and those memories that and become bitter and, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, unforgiveness and all those things, and let those set in, that's just going to lead us to more life in that regards. Or we can choose to believe that good things are ahead, right? And that we
Mm-hmm.
have the power to change
To
that
change
and
it.
start believing those things that we want in our lives. And then we see our lives go in the same way.
Yeah, I know. I'm familiar with this study. I'm also, as an athlete, I would before my race, and you'll see when you see a lot of the athletes are running or even basketball players, you'll see them putting themselves in a state, and once we are in that state, and that state consists of certain rhythms that you have, or what we call everyone is superstition or whatever they put in, but there are certain rhythms that that athlete will put in place to help their minds to bring their thoughts. And what we do is imagine ourselves coming through the tape, imagine ourselves taking the steps and doing the breathing and all of these things that you had talked about, that high quality athletes, this is how they perform to their peak, is to utilize the thought process. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about Jesus. He's the reason why he stayed up on the cross. It says because he saw that the people ahead of him, what the result would be. So even in his death, he was utilizing one of the most powerful things, and that is the power of the thought. So he stayed up there, it says, because of the people that he saw ahead that would be benefiting from what he was doing. So the thought is so powerful because it is the way by which we govern our lives. So here you are, you're utilizing this awareness, and that's one of the things that principles that people tend to um, negate, but it's very important to be aware, because if you are not aware, how can you make the changes? I love how you're talking, Robyn, about here you are becoming a student of yourself. And these are the things I tell people. That's enlightenment. It's not hiding in the woods, chanting and all of these kind of crazy things that they have in mind. It is when we begin to become a student of ourselves. You're asking those questions as to why am I thinking this way? Why can't I not change it? And you started your path. So you're in your 30s. Um, when was that, if you can recollect, around what age did you begin to make those that pivot to begin to now question also, but also when you began to fall in love with yourself?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it was the early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple more big life events. Sometimes it stacks up and
Oh yeah.
until you're just like, right, I can't take this anymore. And a lot of times those are the events, right, that brings us to the point of, even though maybe, like me, I was seeking to
Mm-hmm.
find, but sometimes, right, it just gets so bad that you just like, okay,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
just kind of surrender to it. And so for me, it was that, it was those early 30s that it really started, changing for me. And it took me some years. That's another reason I'm so passionate about what I do,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't have somebody leading me, right?
Yeah.
I figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
My faith is important to me, so I do
Yeah.
believe, right, that was leading me. But I figured out so many of these tools along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love that I get to package it, right,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
give it to people in a short amount of time, because I don't believe it needs to take, you know, even a year, or especially not years and decades, right, that it took me. I
Mm-hmm.
don't believe that's necessary. And so, yeah, so it was really kind of started changing for me in my early 30s. So I've been depression free now for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety free, most of that. That became the next step that I kind of began to work on and learn. So I would say I've been anxiety free for a couple of years now. because
Okay.
that was the kind of the next layer for me.
Yeah.
Um, and then I also, we were talking about imagining and your life becoming something that at one point you couldn't imagine. I
Hmm.
actually adopted as a single woman 7 years ago. I have a 7-year-old now, and if
Mm.
you had told me that, right, that I would get to be a mom when I was
Yeah.
in the middle of all that, I would have thought, there's no way, there's no way. So it's really fun to. I think that's another thing that's really helpful because I think um, as an achiever, I'm always looking right for
Mm.
where I can be better,
Yeah.
and I've learned that it's also important to stop and reflect back and look where we've come, right?
Oh,
Instead of
yes.
always being looking where we
Yeah.
want to go, be thankful, and grateful for how far we've come.
Yeah. I think when we look back, it helps us to stay in a state of gratitude.
Mhm.
And when you're in that state of gratitude, you will never, um, as you mentioned, the depression, you will never give an opportunity for that depression to come in or some of those negative thoughts to enter in if you are in a constant state of thankfulness and being grateful for where you are and the what you have accomplished. Some people are very hard on themselves. They're not able to do some of those things as you're talking about. They don't know how to be kind to themselves. And a lot of times when I greet people, I will ask them, "Are you kind to yourself?" And they would
Mhm.
look at me as if I'm nuts. But you know, it's a really powerful tool to cause someone to think for a minute. Am I
Mhm.
really? And so it causes them to probe. So here you are. You're in you started your journey as far as becoming self-aware in your 30s, and you're moving forward, and you've conquered, in a sense, depression, anxiety. You are anxiety free recently in the last few years. Talk to me about um, how, once you were at that place and you started imagining these new worlds, how did you begin to put some of those pieces together to say, let me formalize my journey into a concept that I can now turn around and offer to someone to help them in their journey?
hmm Yeah, I think for me it was, gratitude. I'm so thankful, right, for how far I've come. I'm thankful
Mm-hmm.
that I get to pass this on to my son, right? And it gets to then pass on to generations. But I feel like what the knowledge I gained and what I can provide other people
Mm-hmm.
is so powerful that it was a little selfish to keep it to myself.
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
like I feel that and it brings me joy to help other people too.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what brings me joy.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to keep that to myself. I am, starting a business, being an entrepreneur, those things, it's not, the easiest thing to do. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that, right? And so when it's hard and all the time that I put in, that's what keeps grounding me and reminding me that that there's a reason I'm doing this, right? It's not just about me, it's about helping other people so
Mm-hmm.
that they can live in freedom in life. And then it becomes a ripple effect for them. So, right? So,
Yeah.
one person I can help is so much more than one because it affects all the people around them for
Yeah.
generations, really.
Exactly. I think the process of becoming self aware, and again, that's my definition of being enlightened, is one becomes self aware. And as you begin to move through your spaces and grow, utilize the tools to help you to become a better human spirit, it would be, as you mentioned, selfish not to be able to do that. And I think in a lot of people, the reason why someone had asked me, we're talking about some of the things that they went through, and then they stopped for a minute and said, I don't know why I went through that. And I said, I do. And I believe you were the best candidate for that process, for you to become awaken from that, the way how you lived and the way how you were programmed and unprogrammed and so forth. The reason why I say that is for the very same reason. You are not selfish now, Robyn. You are eager and excited to take that message to the people to get them from where they are. So you have the faith, I believe. The reason why you went through that is so that you have the faith, the belief that when you speak on those subjects, the power and the authority that you're speaking with is from a personal, deep down, spiritual understanding, and it carries power.
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I agree that we, um, you know, it's, in the Bible it talks about He uses all things to work together for good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's what's going on here, right? Like it was
Yeah.
not fun to live through it, that's for
Mm.
sure. But I would not be who I am today, right?
Yeah.
I would not be the person I am today having not walked through that. And so to
Mm-hmm.
have the gift now to help other people walk through that and walk through it much quicker,
Mm-hmm.
right? And have so much more of their life. It is truly a
Yeah, you are then able to be kinder. You're
gift.
able to empathize with that person. You are able to be more loving to them than they are to themselves in many cases because they are putting so much pressure on themselves. And you're there to help them to alleviate that demand that they're putting on themselves that is unnecessary because of whatever reasons they have in their life. And as you are in that state, you're able to then hold their hands and walk them through. So here you are, you're now, um, what, talk to me about the process by which you came up with that system. Um, how did you how did you formalize it, Robyn? How did you now begin to, because I know some of it you lived, but how were you able to translate it and put it down in a format that you can now turn around and as I say to people, you can now feed that person. You've just cooked this wonderful dish. How did you turn around to begin to make it where you can serve it to someone?
And I think there's several things to that. So much of right when we kind of start becoming an expert in something, we've lived something, we do it, we kind of set up these practices not even really realizing it, right? It just
Mm-hmm.
becomes the normal to us,
Yeah,
and we kind of think, oh, well, yeah, everybody knows this kind of thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because it becomes normal for us. And so I think for me, it was stepping back and um, really breaking down, right,
Mm-hmm.
what it is that helps me succeed each and every
Mm-hmm.
day, right? And what it is. And and then putting that into a format of clients that they can digest it piece by
Mm-hmm.
piece and start putting it into practice. It's also important to me, two other things that come to mind. I did get certified. I wanted to make sure I could be the best that I could. I feel like I got
Mm-hmm.
certified at a great school that also helps me in those tools and walking through. And then another thing is, it's also, I think what I do is very personalized. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really important. I don't think this is a process that's a one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's great for me with the one-on-one coaching is that I have, guidelines and things that I want to teach and show, but I need to see where that person is in their life. Like what area are they stuck in, right? That's where we're going to spend the
Yeah.
time to help them to walk through. It's not just a B, C, D kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's they really get to lead that based on where they are currently in their life. And my job is to be an expert at showing them their brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is creating and how they're seeing and offering suggestions of ways that they might want to look at it different. And then, when they're receptive to that, then
Mm-hmm.
and start putting that into practice, I mean, they are the ones that do the work, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's just about seeing the light when you can't see, right? When
Yeah.
you're in the
Yeah.
darkness and you can't see it, and seeing a way to take a step in this direction. And then as they put that into practice, it's amazing. I have a client right now that he is putting things into practice. He's a teenager, and I love it because
Hmm.
right their mind, his mind is so open, and he's
Yeah.
putting it into practice, and he's seeing those things right change immediately because he's putting it into practice. He's doing the work. So yeah, so I think that's kind of what makes my program unique, are kind of those three things.
That's awesome. I love the fact that he's starting so young because um, I always tell uh, life coaches and fellow coaches like yourself, I tell them, find those disciples. Jesus had a lot of church people around him, but he went and found himself a couple of disciples, and those boys changed the world.
Yeah.
So this young man, you never know where he would be taking and taking it to the next level. He'll come back in a couple of years and you look at him and go, wow, um, the amount of people that he affects in from his families outward. So
Yeah.
um, talk to me a little about, you had mentioned it quickly, but I want to bring you back there because a lot of people don't understand that as you begin to move forward and you begin to get all your enlightenment, you're get using all these tools, it is a lot of hard work to unprogram yourself and then to start your process. You had mentioned that entrepreneurship is not easy. I want you to come back here for a minute uh, because here you are, you're moving in this journey, and I assume that you had your job, and then here you are moving to entrepreneurship. How how was that? Because in some cases, a lot of people have to deal with some type of fear around this because you're now stepping into a different aspect of where you're beginning to come out from behind the scenes more into open space. Talk to me about some of that challenges
Yeah,
that you had.
and it's funny, you heard me stumble around with my words a little bit because you could see a little bit of where I have a little work to do, right? So
Uh-huh.
me believing that it's not easy, right, is probably not
Hmm.
serving me, right?
Yeah.
But that is the reality of the way that I feel sometimes because it is very different. I've been, in the corporate world. I've ran a team. I'm used to running a lot of things. I'm used to a lot of hard work, but entrepreneurship is
Hmm.
is a completely different lane, right? There is maybe a little confusion that can come in because everybody's telling you this is the way, right, to
Hmm.
find, because really the point in it for me is finding the people that I can help, right, and
Yes.
finding the right spot to uh, to do that and to share my story and to allow the audience, the people that need me, to hear me,
Hmm.
to be able to see whether they can get help. And so for me, that's been a very different, trying to find where those places are, right? Trying to find those connections. And
Hmm.
so it's almost like I think about it as I've been a homeowner for a while, and so I'm, as a single woman in charge of everything that needs to happen to maintain. And so when I needed a new roof, you know what? I learned a lot about roofs, right? And so I think it's one of those areas where it's something that I've never known. It's something I've never done. And
Hmm.
so it's a constant learning curve, trying
Yeah.
to find the right place, the right lane for me to be
Yeah.
able to find right the clients that are
Hmm.
working for me. So it's
Yeah.
almost like learning. I have several degrees and all that, but this again is like going back to school and
Yeah.
learning
Yeah.
something completely new.
And there's a degree of stepping out in faith that
Yes.
it takes to become an entrepreneur. Um, there's a degree of faith to step out to become enlightened because you are on this personal journey that you're starting. It is a lot of faith that is incorporated in it because you're stripping your thoughts and you're being naked from all the programming that you have been programmed for X amount of years, and beginning on this journey where you don't know where what's going to happen. A couple, you don't know. And so there's a degree of faith when you begin to walk that, and there's a degree of faith in that particular journey all the way through until we die. Here you are with the business. So I know how that feels because I had to deal with some of those. I had actually shut down Threads of Enlightenment for a little while because I knew the next phase of the business, and I didn't want to do it. I
Mm-hmm.
just didn't want to.
Yeah.
And I had to come to, I had a talk with myself and began to talk to myself and question myself: Is this real? Why not? Why not go beyond this fear? Why not challenge yourself to a different degree? And once I did that, it began to explode, and it's just incredible. Now we're in I think 42 countries. We are
Mm-hmm.
255 cities around the world. We are ranking 430 something in globally. All of these stuff would have not been happening had I not make the decision to go ahead and you know make that step and conquer that fear, as you say. So I'm glad that you did that for yourself.
Oh, thank you. I'm also a believer, right? I do believe that sometimes when things are the hardest, like, right, where you were at your kind of your crossroads there, right, with
Hmm.
threads of enlightening and you stop for a little bit. But I feel like sometimes when we're right there at the biggest push, if we just push through, right, like
Yeah.
it's explosion, like that's what you experience, right? It's on the other
Yeah.
side. And it's kind of like it's for me, right? Like I've overcome depression, anxiety, like all these different things, health issues, all this stuff. And this is just my next part, right? Where I
Hmm.
get to grow
Yeah.
to another level because it really is still comes back to my thinking, right? My belief. Like
Yes.
you heard,
Hmm.
like you heard me say, well, it's been hard. Well, that's my belief that's slowing me down, right?
Yes.
And
Hmm.
so it's in that's what's so great about right all of
Yeah.
this and what I teach and what I've learned is we get to apply it to all areas of our lives, right? And
Hmm.
so we push into one area and we grow, and then it's time for us to push into another area. And so this is again part of my journey
Yeah.
of me
Yeah.
growing to the next level.
It's always a thought. It's always
Mm-hmm.
a perception that we have that is keeping us in bondage, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And once we begin to question those things, and for me, I believe, and I always say to people, that your blessing is beyond your fear. Whatever you're afraid of, your blessing has been waiting there, waiting for you to handle this situation so that it could begin to manifest. And until we handle it, um, uh, we will never get a chance to see what's beyond that. And like I said, once I handled mine, it happened. So it's your world is going to change drastically since you walk through that. So, but here you are, and you have your classes, you have your. I love the fact that you are making it personal so that you can get a chance to focus on the individual to see where they're at, because it's always where they're at, and everyone has their own journey. And so once you identify what those thought patterns that they had in their mind to create whatever monsters they have to face, um, that personal piece is really powerful. And I think you can make some serious impact in a person on a on a quicker basis than the other different styles and approach that people have out there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so great, to watch people and to see how it's working, right? Like just as you said, and just, seeing people grow is it's one thing to see ourselves grow and to
Hmm.
step back and to see other people do that and push through those limiting beliefs. It's just beliefs. It's just really powerful.
You should see the smile on your face when you're talking about people getting it, and I tell them that's what happens as we begin to become enlightened and we go through the path. The reward is that we become servants, and it is a powerful reward because it brings joy. And I am talking to you, and I'm seeing that joy on your face as you're talking about how and when some of your clients start to walk their path and get it, as they say. So the reward of all of that is that you are living in a space of servanthood to other people, and it's a beautiful place to be. Robyn, I want to thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. I know this meeting was a long time coming, and thank you so much for your patience and for sharing your story, because it is a powerful story of how you got from what you have today to how you got there by overcoming all of your challenges that were created in your thoughts. And I thank you so much for coming by.
Well, Ken, it was worth the wait for sure. Let me tell you, I really enjoyed this. Just thank you for all your wisdom that you shared as well, and just thank you for having me on. It's been great. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Everyone who's listening to this podcast, we hope to continually help you to learn how to embrace moments of darkness, because it is in the darkness that we learn how to develop and use our abilities to truly see those parts of ourselves, often invisible to us, in the light. It becomes your responsibility to navigate through all of your trials, to find out who you truly are, and begin your journey to loving yourself, which is possibly one of the most difficult things you will ever do in your life. To love yourself and to find the real you, but always remember to enjoy the journey. Thank you for coming by. Please subscribe, and if you can support us financially, we deeply appreciate it.